I'm joined by another high-profile guest. Mr. Douglas Robert Brown is with us today. Not more known to the general public as Dougie Brown, with the curly locks on top of his head. Still got a bit of that going. Dougie, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Shaky. Yeah, good to speak to you, mate. Evening, everybody. How are you all doing? I'm thankful. I've still got a few grey ones, a bit greyer than they used to be, and a bit less than used to be, but there's still a bit there.
You mentioned to me actually over message. I might get in trouble for this, but you did message me saying that a bit more than Gavin Hamilton.
Mate, have you? Well, he was on a couple of weeks ago. Now I was really shocked. I was like, Gav was always kind of a bit of a pin-up boy, wasn't he? He was always he backed his looks and all that sort of stuff. And he's like, oh, he looks like Bruce Willis now, doesn't he?
Well, look, mate, it works for him. I think it works. The George Clooney stroke Bruce Willis look. Gav's going down now. You know, he's still out running 10Ks like yourself. Yeah. You know, keeping fit. So I mean, it's really good to see the old guard of Scottish cricket are still, can still. I mean, every time I speak to you over WhatsApp or something, you're coming back from a run. So I mean, it's impressive. I wish I could. I should really take inspiration and get myself into the mix. But just for the viewers that are tuning in, I'm sure a lot of you will know Dougie Brown. But just to give you a little bit more of a background, so Dougie Brown is a former Scotland, former England, and former Warwickshire all-rounder, top all-rounder. And as well as that, in more recent times, he's ventured into the coaching world as well. He's coached some teams such as Namibia once upon a time in the World Cup, and also in more recent times the United Arab Emirates, where you stay now, Dougie, I believe.
Yeah, we're in Dubai at the moment. We've just moved house in the last week as well, so it's been a bit chaotic. But thankfully, you can see the boxes have all gone, and it actually looks like a house now, which is great. But we've been here for the last 3 years. We love it. It's it's a really nice place to live, great place to bring kids up, which is what's important to us. It's starting to get pretty hot at the minute, which is, it has a challenge, but to be fair, 9 months of the year, the weather's unbelievably good. 3 months, it's quite oppressive, but you take the rough with the smooth, don't you? So we love it here.
No, I'm glad to hear you're nice and settled, family are all good. 3-month-old and a 5-year-old, you were telling me now, so the 3-month-old must be keeping you busy.
She's amazing, to be fair. She sleeps through the night. It's probably many people don't want to hear that, but she sleeps.
Oh, I'm jealous. I'm jealous hearing that, mate. I'm very jealous hearing that.
I'm saying that. Probably my wife will come down now with a screaming baby. It's like, oh my God. But no, she's amazing. The 5-year-old's brilliant. She loves it here. She's in school. She, speaking a bit of Arabic and that sort of stuff, which is really cool. Seeing things from a very different perspective. You live in the UK for a long time, and you're kind of closeted as to the way it is in the UK, whether it's Scotland or England, whatever. You come over here, and the majority of people here are expats, and there's a completely different way to live your life. And part of that is embracing like what you come to, and I think that's really important. And I love the fact that we get a chance to expose ourselves to that over a sort of an extended period of time. I think it's great for kids. It's great for us. And I think it makes you a much more rounded person to experience the multiculturalism of, the true sort of first generation multiculturalism that you get in the UAE.
Mm-hmm. No, fantastic. It's awesome to hear. So Dougie, you were born way back, a day before me. We share birthdays just after the day after each other. Born 29th of October. I'm 30th of October. You were born by 1969.
All right, okay. Yeah, can you not lie about that? Can you not lie? Can you make me a little bit younger or not?
Listen, if you want it, we can add a few years on. Look, you still look 30. You still look in your 30s, Dougie.
Thanks, mate. Thank you.
Born back in lovely Stirling, great part of the world, in Scotland. I want to take you back. I want to take you all the way back and tell me about your childhood, your family background, and what it was like growing up in Stirling.
Well, I was born in Stirling, but I grew up in Alloa. So, like the wee county, it's Clackmannanshire. It's the smallest county in Scotland. It was, we were very lucky. We had everything there. I played football and I played golf as a kid. They were my two sports. Winter sport, summer sport. All my mates, they played rugby and cricket, and I was quite happy playing football in the winter and golf in the summer and all that sort of stuff. Take my golf clubs to school and hop over the fence and jump onto the golf course and that sort of stuff. Really supportive parents who, wanted me to do well, whatever I chose to do. But it was never nothing was ever pushed on me about playing sport or being academic or whatever. It was just I got support whatever I was doing really. And basically I came into cricket really late. My mates who were rugby cricket mates, they were a man short for Clackmannan in an under-13 Scottish Cup game against Ayrshire on like a Tuesday night or something like that. It was a wet Tuesday night, and I'd been playing so much football and stuff because we were getting through. We played for quite a good team and all that sort of stuff, and it was actually getting quite hard work playing football every night and training and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, yeah, I'll come and play. They were a man short. I went and played, and from that moment, I was absolutely smitten by cricket. I absolutely loved it to a point whereby I kind of got involved in cricket at Clackmannan. Started playing in the second team. We only ran 2 teams. Played in the second team with men when I was sort of 14, and I thought that was phenomenal. And you go on away trips, and the guys, some of them were my teachers at school and stuff, and they kind of looking after you. You know how it works in Scotland. You have to look after each other, and I think that creates an amazing club atmosphere. With a great sort of diverse mix of people who are playing cricket at the time. Sanjay Patel, Mike Cousin, there was David Henderson, Mahindra Patel, and so many good professionals that came through as well. And we kind of probably boxed above our weight really for a long part of it. But that was my sort of first introduction to cricket. Sport was always something that was really important to me, but cricket was something that I really embraced, and I loved everything that cricket sort of gave. I loved the challenge of it, and the discipline that came with it. And so that was my first start really. And from there on in, everything was about sort of trying to play cricket at a better level, which I suppose I left school and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went and worked in a bank. I mean, what the hell was I doing going and working in a bank? But I did. I went and worked there for 18 months. But I was like, well, okay, if I want to play cricket, I need to move and do something that actually allows me to better myself. So I did. I went to university down in London, studied physical education, and I used to travel up every Friday night on the bus to come and play cricket for Clackmannan on a Saturday. Whoa. Because I wanted to play cricket for Scotland.
Yeah, okay.
And the only way I could do that is by dominating and doing really well for Clackmannan. So I did that travel.
That's a big commitment, eh? I mean, I've done some journeys from like the likes of Manchester and stuff, and that tires you out. But a bus journey from London, and then obviously getting back, I'm assuming, for Monday morning. Yeah, so I'd be playing cricket on a Saturday. Dad would pick me up early on a Saturday morning. I'd go and have a couple of hours sleep. I'd get into Stirling at 5 o'clock in the morning, have a couple of hours sleep, and then we might be travelling to Aberdeen. So you're meeting at 9 o'clock for a 1 o'clock start. So you've got a couple of hours and off you go. And then on a Sunday, I was sort of playing for like representative stuff, playing for the Central Belt, as we like to call it, and we'd be all over the country again. And then wherever we were, I'd get back to Stirling, get the bus again, and go down overnight to a lecture. We started at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, so it was like trips across London. You must have been close to fall asleep in a few of those lectures, I'd imagine, on a Monday morning. To be honest, it wasn't about the lectures. It was about me playing cricket. It was like it was really important for me to come back up and actually get to a point whereby I saw that journey through. Because I wasn't a good enough player as a young kid to dominate, that environment and deserve a county contract. That was the last thing that I was even thinking about, really. What I wanted to do was play cricket for Scotland, and the only way I could do that was by exposing myself to a different environment than Alloa, which is very small, and actually go and challenge myself somewhere else. But I still needed to prove myself in that environment. And that's kind of what I did. Just on the cricket, I mean, you mentioned football, Dougie, but I mean, you're underselling yourself here. I mean, from what I've read up, you played a bit of football for Scotland under 18s. Is that right? I did, but I think I got in by default. I think they made a mistake with my. No, I did play. I played football. I played football to a reasonable standard. And if I'm honest, I was never big enough. I was a goalkeeper. I was a Scottish keeper, right? It doesn't bode very well, does it? But I was a Scottish goalkeeper, and I was playing representative football kind of all the way through from
under 11, I guess, up to
Yep.
under 18s, and I was never really big enough. Like looking back, you know, I'm now sort of 6'2", and you
I
know,
was thinking that. I mean, you're not a small guy, but you were a late developer then.
I was, yeah. It took me a long time to grow and that sort of stuff, and I was never really, if I'm honest, I was probably never good enough. I was certainly never tall enough to be a dominant goalkeeper in that environment. Although I was playing representative football and stuff, and I loved it. But yeah, I think as soon as I started playing cricket, it was like, okay, well, football just has to go. Saying that, I went to university and then still played football at university, and you know, played against some pretty, you know, some pretty high. So we played all the, at the time, all the Vauxhall Opal teams. Played against Brentford. Played against who did we play? QPR reserves. So we played quite a decent standard of football and stuff like that. But long and short, as my heart was always in cricket, and that was a journey I wanted to try and follow.
So you make these coach journeys, you come up and down the country. When do you now start kind of making that transition into getting recognised by rep stuff? I.e., did you play like Scotland in the 19s, or what was your journey like into the international stuff?
So it's kind of a strange one, and I think it's actually quite a good story. I never got picked to play under 16 cricket for Scotland, under 19 cricket for Scotland at any stage. I always played, and you play these trial matches, you know, whoever against the rest. Well, I was always in the rest, and I never really got an opportunity to play. I wasn't, and you know, like all my mates, they would go and play. I remember they went down and played against England schools at Edgbaston. And I just thought this was the coolest thing in the world. And I was gutted that I didn't get a chance to.
Little did you know that was little did you know, mate.
I know. That's the thing. That's the thing. You know, you look back now and you're like, it's actually quite funny. But I didn't play Scotland under 19s until I'd actually played for the full Scotland side. So I made my debut against Ireland in Dublin in 1989. That was a long time ago. But Andy Gorham made his debut on the same day and that sort of stuff. So that was nice, you know. And then 3 days later, we came back to play at West of Scotland against Australia. So, you know, Steve Waugh was in his pomp. He was averaging 400 in the Test series and all that sort of stuff. And it was an amazing day. Like the weather was unbelievable, and West Scotland was packed, which was quality as well. And so I played against Australia, and then I got picked for the Scotland under 19 side. Which is kind of I'm trying to work out how this can be. Did the under 19 selector not like you, but the national team selector liked you? I don't know, but the bottom line is that I persevered. I didn't want to be put off by that. I was like, okay, no, that's fine. I'm not getting picked, but I'll keep on trying. I'll keep, you know, knocking the door down, and ultimately, if my performances are good enough, then I'll get a chance. And I think, you know, there's different ways to get into an environment. I think ones who deal with adversity in the early stages of a career, I do think that actually stacks up really well for them to have a fairly successful career, because like there's no doubting that if you're playing professional sport, you will have more bad days than good days, particularly cricket, because a lot of the stuff you can't control. You can control your preparation and your processes and all that sort of stuff. Your outcomes, like, you know, you can't control, because there's always somebody that is likely to have one ball in them that's better than your day, and you have to deal with that sort of stuff. So I dealt with a lot of adversity, a lot of knocking back and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, I think I'd like to think it's quite a good story for anybody who just wants to be resilient enough to keep trying and pushing and actually get themselves to the point whereby you do deserve to get picked. And I just kept on persevering, and I got to that point, which was great.
Well, look, it's really inspiring to hear, Dougie, because a lot of people probably feel by the time they're like 18, 19, 20, I've maybe missed the boat here. And your story there, early doors, certainly suggests. I mean, I was totally the opposite. I played 13s, 15s, 17s, went to the MCC when I was 17, 19. I did all that transition before I went into the national team. And I find it hard to believe how I would have dealt with it if I didn't have that to go then into the national team. I think it would have been but it's a real test of your mental strength. I think that's something reading up about you. You've always been a very mentally strong character, and that speaks as we move on into your career. It was around 1990 that you went down to play against Warwickshire for Scotland. Tell me about your memories of that game, and obviously you impressed.
Yeah, I actually wrote to Warwickshire through a guy called David Wilson, who played for Clackmannan. He was like the Scottish national coach education educator, and he had played cricket in the Midlands. He had played a bit of Warwickshire, maybe second. He tells me he plays for Warwickshire second team. I don't know if he did, but he was certainly well known around the Midlands for his cricket and that sort of stuff. And he was quite influential in my career because, you know, he was somebody that could open doors and he was well connected, etc., etc. And I didn't really know where my cricket was going. I knew I was okay, but I didn't know how good I really was. So I actually spoke to him and said, look, what are the chances of you maybe opening a door for me or whatever? He said, look, there's two people I know that you can write to. So one of them is a guy called Ken Higgs at Leicestershire. So I wrote to Leicestershire and asked for a trial. And the other one was a guy called Bob Cottam at Warwickshire, who was the manager at Warwickshire at the time.
Good man.
Top man. And so I wrote to both of them. They were the only two counties I wrote to. I got a letter back from Leicester within 3 or 4 days. Really sorry. It was like amazing, like getting a letter with the fox on it and all that sort of stuff. Leicestershire County Cricket Club. And that's quite cool in its own regard. And it was like, unfortunately, you know, we're fully committed for the season, etc., blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, no worries. And then Warwickshire, actually, they phoned me and said, it was Bob Cottam that phoned me, said, we'd like you to come down. So I went down for a trial. So I didn't actually play against Warwickshire. I actually wrote and went down for a trial.
Okay.
So I went down for a trial and there was 30, I remember it to this day, it was a boiling hot day at Edgbaston. 13 of us we were on the Colts ground at Edgbaston, so the ground to the side of the main ground. And it was boiling hot. And it was a bit of a test, you know, like they put down sort of jugs of ice cold water and juice and that sort of stuff. And basically just see who stops first. And, you know, and I just did what I do. I just kept running in and I had a hit. And then I got invited down for a second trial. And there was 3 of us this time. So they'd whittled out 10 and there was 3 of us. And the other 2 guys that were there were clearly guys who had come through the system, you know, from a very young age, you know.
Local boys. Are you talking more local boys down there?
Both English guys. One was from the Midlands, one was from Oxfordshire, and they, but they were sort of schoolboy prodigies sort of things. And I was 19 at the time. They were 18, and I got invited back down again. 3 of us, and this time we were training with the Warwickshire contracted staff. So some of the first team players, some of the second team players, and I did all right. I got invited down for a match, basically. But this time I was working as a drayman at Alaba Brewery. So I was delivering beer through pretty much Glasgow every single day. And I was loving it because I was getting paid really well to do it. You know, when you're a student, you're like, so how good is this? And so I went down and I took a week off and went down and played a game against Leicestershire. Did all right, got 4 wickets in the first innings, 2 in the second. And then I came back up to Scotland. I didn't really know how it had gone. I didn't know if 4 wickets and 2 wickets was it good or bad or indifferent? I don't know. And I got a phone call from Bob Cottam saying they wanted to offer me a summer contract. So would I accept £130 a week? And I was like, yeah, I'd do this for nothing, mate. Don't worry about that. The thing was, I was getting paid like 200 quid a week working as a drayman in the brewery. But it wasn't about that. It was just about the opportunity because that was
just getting into playing.
Yeah, and so I went down and I went down to Warwickshire and I shared a house with Joey Benjamin, Roger Toos, Tony Merrick, Graham Welsh, so Adrian Pearson. So there was 6 of us in a house, which was on the corner, right in the corner of the road where the ground is. And it was just amazing. Like I was in this little box room and they were, you know, to be part of something like that. And it's just actually crazy thinking back, you know, to that time, what it was actually like. You know, you see these mega stars sort of rocking up, you know, Alan Donald's there and Small, Tim Munton, Dermot Reeve, and you're like, oh my God, like, you know, the fact that I didn't know them as sort of implicitly as maybe if I'd been English, I would have probably been a bit more fazed by the environment, but I actually wasn't, because I didn't really know. I knew who they were, but I didn't really know who they were and how amazing they were. And so I just kind of got stuck in, and, you know, that's it really. That's what it started.
So what age were you here, Dougie? I mean, you signed, so 92, you signed and played for Warwickshire the same year.
So no, I signed a summer contract in 89.
Right, okay.
1989, so I was 19 at the time.
Right, okay.
So 89, and then at the end of that season, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I was still at university, and then at the end of the 89 season, I got offered a year summer contract again. So I got offered another year, still at university, and then at the end of the 1990 season, I got offered a 2-year full contract. So I was still at university, but I was actually getting paid when I wasn't there. So I made my debut in 1991. So my one-day debut for Warwickshire against Derbyshire. Played 3 or 4 Sunday league games, and I actually did pretty well in the first games that I played. And then I finished university, and it was like, okay, right. And I remember actually I was doing my dissertation, so I'd kind of got everything done before January, knowing that I wanted to try and clear as much as I could. So it was just my exams that I had to do, my finals. And then clear me up for the rest of the season. And I remember to this day that my dissertation was amazing until the conclusion, and then the cricket season started, and it was absolute pump. So the last 2000, no, I got it done, but the last 2000 was, well, honestly, I might as well have got my 5-year-old to do it, because I just wanted to be playing cricket.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I mean, we're going to touch on your some of your highlights of your Warwickshire career. And then we'll go on to talk about some other great achievements you've had. You were part of the Warwickshire treble winning side in 1994. What an achievement, what a team to be part of. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you named some of the guys, but there are players such as Dermot Reeve, Brian Lara, part of that team.
He was, yeah.
Ashley Giles, Gladstone Small, to name a few. Take me into that changing room, Dougie. Kind of take me into what that was like.
So I'd been sort of there for 4 years probably by that point. Bob Woolmer had come in, and Bob and Dermot Reeve, they're just, I mean, any successful team that I've been part of or have seen relies on an amazing coach captain relationship. There needs to be a lot of mutual stuff going on there, mutual respect, mutual trust. They had that. Bob was an amazing innovator. Dermot was an amazing people person. You'd have a conversation with Dermot, and you'd never leave the conversation feeling bad about yourself. He had this amazing way just to pump your tires up, and you go away thinking, geez, I'm actually quite a good player, or I'm a decent bloke, or whatever. He had that canny knack, and that got the best out of his players. Bob was amazing at pushing boundaries of what maybe people have thought was impossible. Like, no, come on, let's prove it. I've got this idea, we'll prove it wrong. So, for example, and one of the big things, there was 2 big things that season. 3 big things. One was the coach-captain relationship, which was just so tight. Both of them, Dermot and Bob, had massive flaws, but so many positives. But the flaws that they had, they dovetailed them amazingly. So what Dermot was not so strong at, Bob was super strength, and vice versa. So you got this amazing package of just the best of everything. So innovation, but also being sort of encouraged to go out and maybe fail if that's what it takes. But, you know, practice things you've never practiced to take yourself to that next level. And then the second thing was Brian Lara coming. You know, he'd just broken the world record. And all of a sudden, within 2 weeks of him breaking the test world record, he's in the environment, and it's like this is ridiculous. And then he went 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. He got 600s, and then a 500, and it was like, okay, well, this guy is unbelievable, but we want to kind of prove to you, Brian, as a young player, that we are worthy of sort of being a good player alongside you. So there was this. People were there to try and prove almost to Brian that we were as well. We could play too. and that was unbelievable. And probably the last thing was that actually there was an amazing amount of young players coming through who were encouraged just to go and do the stuff. They didn't have to come and play at the top of the game. You know, they were fitting into an amazing spine of a side. So, you know, Andy Moles, one of the best opening batsmen in county cricket, never didn't play for England, but a phenomenal player.
Just on that, Dougie, I spoke to him. It's already been out, of course. I spoke to Andy Moles. The podcast has been out. He's obviously gone through some challenges. But you know what? Just while you mentioned that name, I'm just shocked. I mean, the great coaches we all played under him. What's your thoughts? Should he have played for England?
Oh, without doubt, he was unbelievable. He was the most tenacious player, the bravest player, the most resilient batter. He was. You can call him whatever he was. He was just a good player, a really, really good player who would have done brilliantly at Test level. You look at the likes of Vaughan and Trescothick, when they actually got picked for England, they weren't really dominating county cricket but their games just lent themselves to playing the ball that bounced above the stumps. People who just bowled that channel all day relentlessly. Moeller was exactly the same. You know, he had this incredible brain, this mind, this sort of tenacity, a sheer bloody mindedness, basically. But he was also really skillful as well. He knew his game, quite limited game, but he knew it really well, and he worked around the shots that he had. But he pushed himself really hard in everything that he did, and he just made the best of the package, you know, that he had. Without a shadow of a doubt, if he had played for England, he would have been a revelation. There's no doubt. And we can sit here and, you know, talk about how good he could have been. In a way, he never got a chance to prove it, and we can all talk and, you know, just talk around all this stuff that might have happened or didn't. But he didn't get the chance, and that's a real shame, because I actually think England missed a massive trick. They used a lot of opening batters in that period of time. I think Moeller would have been a brilliant player to have for maybe 3-4 years through that period. Because you know, you look at his numbers in county cricket, they're extraordinary, really.
I mean, when I looked at it and I was going through it with him, he was very humble, to be honest. He was very humble about it, and he said, "Sorry, you can probably hear my daughter screaming in the background."
That's all right. Invite her in. She's probably got better chat than me, mate.
No, when she screams like that, listen, I like to be a safe distance. He talked about just the players that were around him, and he obviously mentioned Graham Gooch, Atherton, these kind of guys, and then Butcher. And he said, you know, these were top end players, and he kind of played it down. And I think he was playing it down too much. It's interesting to see you talk about it, because you seem pretty clear about it, that the man should have had a chance and should have played. The other man that we're obviously talking about, Brian Lara. He mentioned once that Brian Lara got the batters round and kind of said, you know, we all need to find something that motivates us. And Brian Lara's was, he got paid, I think, per run, a couple of quid per run. So he wanted to be churning out the money incentive. Moeller said his incentive was his kids watching in the stadium, and he wanted them to know he was doing well. Did you have anything like that?
I always went back to that. So I had two things. One was that I called it, in the end, I came to all of us have fear of failure, right? And that's one of the things, that having that psychological ability to overcome fear of failure. Because cricket, it's a great sport for fear of failure, because you sit around and wait to fail, right? So as a batter, you're batting at number 4 or whatever, and you're sitting waiting. And all of the game changes, it ebbs and flows all the time. You know, somebody might be in the middle of an amazing spell, it might be quite a hostile spell, or the game changes. You know, it's a really important, pivotal part of the game. So, you know, the pressure changes with the game, the ebb and flow of the game. And then you sit and wait, and like then you start to self-doubt, and you're like, have I done my preparation? Am I good enough? Am I brave enough? You know, this is quick, this is intimidating. All these questions that kind of go on. In the end, I came to terms with that, and I called it my worst case scenario. And as soon as I got that, I was like a different player, particularly from a batting point of view. As a bowler, I didn't really have fear of failure. Early part of my career, maybe, but as a batter, when I could come to terms with failing, my game really prospered. But it took me quite a long time. And the way it worked for me was like, okay, you go out to bat, you're a bit nervous, your beans are going, all that sort of stuff. We all go through it, whether you're playing club cricket or international cricket. It's the same thing. You go out there and, okay, if I get out first ball today for naught, is it going to change my life? Yes or no? No, it's not changing my life. Okay, cool. Play the first ball and then you go from there. If I get out second ball for naught, has it changed my life? No. And all of a sudden you get one off your legs for two, and you got two. And slowly but surely you start piecing together the semblance of an innings, understanding that actually it's okay to fail, and you might fail, you might get any ball, but is it changing your life? No, it's not. The only pressure I'm putting on myself is if it's life changing. And I came to terms that it didn't have to change my life. But what I did do at some stage, as and when I got to 40 or 50 or 60 or 70, you start to flip it on its head, and it's like, okay, if I get 150, is it going to change my life? It might do. Yeah. And I tried to sort of flip my fear of failure on its head to try and turn it into a real sort of positive thing. And that was, for me, that was really important. But it took me a long time to understand where I was going with that. And I can't remember what I was going to talk about the first bit. There was two parts that I can't remember, got in my mind, but that was really important.
I've never heard a kind of a make-up like that of the way to look at fear of failure and flipping it on its head. That was interesting. So don't worry about it. The fact that you went off on a tangent there, Dougie, it's all right.
Sorry.
1997. You played in a fantastic team. You won everything in '94. But it's good to hear that you as a team still made sure you came together. Like you said, you hired a gun overseas. He was winning games probably kind of single-handedly, but you still got the best out of the team. It's really, really interesting to hear. You keep going on. I mean, it's an amazing career you had in 1997. You were the leading wicket taker in the country around the county circuit. I mean, what the amount of good bowlers that would have been playing in the circuit at that point. I think the standard of bowling back in your era probably is a bit stronger than what it is nowadays. I mean, there's some great quicks kicking about. Great effort to lead the charge. What went right for you that season?
Bowling at the other end to Alan Donald, because everybody, all I did that year was held my length, and people tried to tee me up because they didn't want to face AD. Mate, he was bowling absolute rockets that year. And it's interesting as well, because I don't know if Gav actually spoke about it in his podcast, but we played a game in '97 at Edgbaston. It was a one-day game, and AD had 6 slips. It was a one-day game. Gav was batting. We had 2 third men catching on the boundary for like just getting one like that. So it was basically 8 guys catching. AD got 6 for 15, and that's kind of why I think I prospered. When you bowl at the other end to somebody who is world class and actually is just, you got the fear of God up everybody. The opposition knew that if they lose a wicket, okay, it might be okay for a while. Some guys can go out and bat against that pace or that ferocity or whatever. AD just kept coming hard. Everybody, it didn't matter if it was a test match or a Warwickshire game, he just kept coming. And he had the physicality to do that. He had the skill to do that, and the mindset to do that. And he did it every single day. It might be going really well for an opposition. You lose one wicket, they know that AD can run through them. So what actually I benefited from was probably that. And I bowled quite well that year, but I just held my length. I was generally bowling at the other end. So you're bowling into the wind, up the hill, or whatever it is. And it was like, okay, that's fine. I'll do that. So basically you got all your wickets with guys just cracking it and thinking, right, I need to swing. That's the thing. Exactly. And I just held my length really well. And people, yourself, like as a bowler, if you can hold your length, it's quite hard work as a batter. And, people end up throwing their hands at one, nicking it or whatever, or chipping it to cover or something like that. And I did really well. AD got a lot of wickets, but I got a lot of wickets as well. And it was like, cricket for me is broke a lot of bones. AD broke a lot of bones, I imagine. And you just chucked away and getting all those. No. Exactly, but that's the thing, but your bowling is a partnership. Cricket's about partnerships, whether you're batting and bowling or fielding or whatever it is. You're stronger as 2 or 11 than you are as 1, and you're not going to win anything if there's just one of you. You need to be like teams.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether it's a partnership, a bowling partnership as a team. And I think that worked really well. I bowled really well at the other end to him. He terrorised people, and I actually picked up some cheap wickets, and that's pretty much how it was.
Listen, I guess the question is, how did it's very smart by Warwickshire. I mean, the players, the overseas boys that they picked up at that time, two of probably the leading cricketers in the world in their skill. Brian Lara, you know, if not the great, in my opinion, best batter ever, and Alan Donald. You know, you could argue against it for it, and any day could be one of the greatest bowlers of all time. How did you manage to? How did Warwickshire get who was the clever person there that picked these guys up? And was the financial bucket quite healthy at Warwickshire?
You know what? It probably was quite healthy, but I think we were just really lucky. Alan was he came across as a young kid. You know, he actually couldn't speak English when he came across. He only spoke Afrikaans, and you know, he stayed there for 12 years or so all the way through, which was phenomenal. Brian, we got really lucky in as much that he had just broken a world record. We had tried to sign somebody else, Manoj Prabhakar, and he got injured, which allowed us to sign Brian on the back of his world record, which was unbelievable, really. Oh, you're still there. There we go.
Yeah,
just lost you for a minute. I think we got a bit lucky, but I think the one thing about Warwickshire is that once you're there, you tend to stay there for a long time if you can.
Yeah.
And you know, that's a really healthy place to be. You know, we spent a lot of time developing a culture and working on behaviours that actually allowed people to be together. You know, there was in '94. It sounds like we had the best team environment in the world, and everybody was, you know, happy slappy, you know, patting each other on the back. It wasn't like that at all. You know, there's still little factions in the dressing room. You know, you'd rather go out for a beer or something to eat with this guy as opposed to that guy, because ultimately, you know, you're 20 people that have been put together in a work environment, and that doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're playing sport or you're working in an office. But we managed to have complete respect for each other. We understood what strengths people were, and people were happy to hold a hand up and say, I'm not very good at this. So that's fine. You're not very good at it. I know you're not. You know you're not. I'll do it for you. And that was we covered each other's backs really, really well. But definitely from a culture point of view, that's what's allowed us to keep some of the best players, like particularly Alan, coming back year on year, because it's really unusual. Gloucester had it with Courtney. You know, Northants had it with Curtly Ambrose.
Lancashire, Wasim Akram.
You know. So again, there was a lot of similar kind of stuff going on. You know, you had world's greatest players at the time coming back year on year. But I'd like to think that, you know, we managed to create, I think all the teams managed to create this sort of little bubble that wanted people to come back, and it actually encouraged people to come back year on year because they actually loved that environment. Not just because they want to get paid.
Money seems to have changed the game, though, Dougie. I don't think that happens now as much. You don't see it as much now.
I think, Shaky. I think I think it's more the international calendar. That doesn't allow people to come back year on year. And I know that when we signed Sean Pollock, who was also an amazing world-class player in 1996, he was only allowed to bowl a certain amount of overs, and that was the first time we had actually been, you know, told that your overseas player can you know, he's got to abide by limitations, and that was Cricket South Africa that put that in place. But you know, nowadays it's the usual thing. You can maybe have 4 or 5 overseas players over the course of a domestic summer. I don't necessarily agree that that's the right way to go, but if you're going to get the world's best players, then you know, you're going to have to do that, because the world's best players are going to be busy during at all stages of the year, not just the domestic summer.
You go on. I mean, we talked about your bowling there, great season, and we're going to talk about some of your international stuff, but I'm going to finish with your Warwickshire stuff first and foremost. 2003, a big season for you. 1,000 first-class runs in the season. That must have been a really proud moment for you. It
was, you know, that was amazing. I'd just been coaching Namibia at the World Cup, and I spent the first sort of 3 months of that, just getting stuck into coaching. And what I actually learned was that, there's a lot of things that I'm asking the guys to do that maybe I wasn't doing myself. And it comes back to bare bones, real fundamental stuff. And I was like, okay, I need to sort that out, because I need, if I was going to be a decent player, I needed to sort it out. And I did sort it out. I managed to get a good pre-delivery movement and all this technical stuff. And I understood what balance was and rhythm was when I was batting. I understood how to build an innings, and the fact that the only important run you'll ever score is your next one, not about what early part of my career, I was, brilliant at getting to 50 and then chucking it away because I wanted to get to 100. That's not how you score hundreds. You score hundreds by just valuing every single ball and getting you to that point. And then the penny kind of dropped. It dropped quite late, but 2003 was amazing. I knew that I went out there, every time I went out to bat, it didn't matter what the score was. If we were 100 for 5 or 100 for 4 because I batted at 6 or 7, it didn't matter. And the amount of times, in 2003, 2004, as a Warwickshire team, we were 100 for 5. We ended up declaring on 500. It was ridiculous. And that was, I'm really proud of that, because actually I love the fact that, the game can be completely and utterly gone away from your team, and then you actually stop the rot and you actually slowly but surely change the whole process and momentum of the game and turn it back to your favour. That then allows other people to come in quite a dominant environment and actually just put the cherry on the top. And I really like the fact that I was able to do that. Particularly,
you kind of look like you ushered the middle order to the tail. You were able to you're important very important batter in that role, because it's a skill in itself to be able to bat with the lower order.
Absolutely right. And I think it's, it is a massive skill, but we didn't really have a tail. We had guys that scored hundreds. There was like Neil Smith, Ashley Giles, Brad Hogg, Tony Frost, so there's 4 guys that have scored, lots and lots of first class hundreds. So it wasn't a tail as such. You're always batting with a batter, and you just had to just get the partnership established, because it didn't matter. If you got in 4-day cricket or in a one-day game, in a run chase, if you get partnership established, it's actually very hard to stop that partnership from evolving if you've both got the right sort of process. And that was, we all sort of prided ourselves in getting, taking the game from a difficult position and taking it to the next stage of the game. And that was kind of how we had been coached, Bob and Dermot particularly, but then John Inverarity as well, who was coaching, a different skill set. And it was very much about just, the game can change at any stage. You just have to want the game to change, and you need to have the skills and the understanding that what needs to happen to change the game. And now, as soon as you start to actually be quite smart about how you play the game becomes much clearer and much simpler. It is actually quite a simple game, but we're the ones that make it really complicated by thinking too much about what might be the case and just actually sticking to what is the case and dealing with what you've got in front of you.
Very interesting, very interesting. Great career. It stemmed over 10 years at Warwickshire, which ended with you coming away with around 12,500 runs across first-class cricket and list A cricket for Warwickshire, and 850 wickets. I mean, it's incredible numbers, Dougie. I mean, it's a consistency that's very impressive, the most, that you can do it over that long period of time. What was for a youngster wanting to come in and play county cricket for 10 years, especially an all-rounder, which is, it's hard work on the body, not much rest in between. What's your advice to an all-rounder coming in?
You've got to be prepared to accept failure. You've got to be prepared to work really hard. You've got to be open-minded, but you've got to be willing to learn. And probably finally, you've got to be at ease being what you are, understanding that you don't have to be bowling at the same pace as Alan Donald, because we've all got optimum pace. If you bowl, 8 k's an hour over that, you're maybe not quite as effective. See, we need to understand what our limitations are, what we can and can't do. If you can't do it, don't do it until you've practiced it, and work on that. Let somebody else do it. If they're good at it and you're not, let them do it, and understand that you can get to that point, by being quite smart about what you do. But I think you've got to be prepared to work hard, because if you don't, you'll never give yourself that chance, because people are looking for you. They're looking for workers. They're looking for people that they want to pick in the team. And I think if you're selectable, you give yourself a really good opportunity to do well in the game, just by giving yourself a bit of longevity and learning on the job, so to speak.
No, fantastic. So we'll move away from your county career. I mean, fantastic. I mean, that's what I know you of, Dougie Brown. You know, the curly hair, which you still got a little bit going on top. That lovely flowing curly hair. I always just remember watching Warwickshire, and I knew your face very well from a young age. 1997, the year that we mentioned that you had a fantastic year. You got selected to play ODI cricket for England out in Sharjah in a Four Nations Champions Trophy. What a proud moment! You know, you must have been thinking you were near abouts the fact that you were having such a golden season.
Yeah, I knew it was, and until you get picked, you don't really know if you are going to get selected and all that sort of stuff. But you know, playing for England was something that I really wanted to do, and you know, there'll be people listening thinking, well, why didn't you want to play for Scotland? It wasn't about not wanting to play for Scotland. It was the fact that I wanted to play at the highest level of cricket I could. And at that stage, cricket in Scotland at the top end of the game wasn't an option, because they weren't playing at that. They are now, but at that stage they didn't. And you know, I was doing well enough. I knew that I was close to England selection, and you know, to get the nod to go and play in Sharjah was phenomenal. You know, I guess the one disappointment I probably did have was I didn't get picked to play or to go on the test tour of the Caribbean. I followed that because I knew I was close to that, and probably in many ways my game probably lent itself better to Test cricket at that stage, which strangely enough. But to get picked to play in Sharjah was amazing, and to go out there and to have an influence on performance of the team, and for us to come away having won the tournament. And I know that, you know, I scored some important runs in that series, and I also took some really important wickets.
Well, yeah, you did take some very important wickets. I mean, your first game, it was just a steady start. It was the second game, I believe, against the West Indies that you really announced yourself in the international. First ball of the game moved a certain Philo Willis, which is a great wicket to get. But then you must have been really buzzing, because you went on to get old teammate and probably best batter in the world at that time, Brian Lara. And you know, by all accounts, it pretty much set up you. If you get the main man out early doors, you know, that's you well on the way to winning the match. So tell me about that game. So
yeah, my debut against India was like, obviously you're making your debut, so you're slightly nervous, but you know you're actually doing okay. So you've earned the right to be at that level, and open the bowling. Sachin, you know, he's a pretty good player. Let's be honest.
Yeah, not bad.
You know, so all these mega stars that we can all list. It went okay. I bowled okay. I didn't ding any wickets, and we won the game, a really close game, which was great. Next game, I actually had a breakfast with Brian at the hotel, because all the teams were staying in the same hotel. So I had breakfast with him in the morning of the West Indies game. So really early, and we're just chatting, having a scrambled eggs and that sort of stuff. And so I got a wicket first. Well, we had to wait for the start of the game. That the broadcasters, it was a 2:30 start or something like that. We were bowling first, and it was delayed. So I was bowling the first over. Dean Headley was bowling the second over. I was bowling into a bit of a wind. Dean was coming with the wind, and that was kind of the way that we had done it. And so we had to wait for 3 or 4 minutes, and then I run in first ball, and I just nipped one back to Philo Wallace, who's quite an aggressive player, very dangerous player, and knocked off stump out, which is great. Next, obviously Brian comes in batting at number 3, and we'd been sort of chatting about cricket and stuff in the morning. First ball, it just nipped away from him, he played and missed, and next ball it swung back and hit him in front. So they were none for 2 after 3 balls, which was, you know, with regards to. Let's
be honest, you've set the game up there, Dougie. For you can dictate the game from there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, you get rid of Brian, and that's a massive. But there's some pretty good players to come. You know, Carl Hooper was in next, and you know there was a whole bunch of really good players as well. But you think when you've got a world-class player like Brian out, then it does make the game a little bit easier for yourself. But for me, it was more about, I wanted us to win. Like, I didn't really sort of probably at the time understand the significance of getting early wickets like that. I really didn't. I just wanted us to win the game, and anything that I could do to influence the game in a positive way was going to be beneficial to the team. And that was what it was. I didn't actually think about my own performance until probably years after, when you actually think I actually did okay there, but at the time it was like, no, let's just win the game and we go on to the next game type thing. And that was kind of what we all thought. And I think as a team, I go back to team environments. Warwickshire 94-95 was an amazing team environment. That England team, where we had these bits and pieces cricketers, full of all-rounders, who were actually really good players in their own discipline.
Please tell me some of the names. Was that be the likes of like an Adam Hollyoak type?
So he was captain. Adam was Hollyoak. His brother was in the side. Ben was there. Ashley Giles, Robert Croft. But then, Nick Knight, Ali Brown, Graham Hick, Alex Stewart, Graham Thorpe. Some pretty good players. Dean Headley. Then you've got Matthew Fleming, Mark Elam, Peter Martin. So there's a whole bunch of guys that are just really, really good players. And a whole bunch of guys who are bits and pieces, but actually were better than that. But the bits and pieces, the bits that you didn't see, were the bits they brought to the team. Just amazing team people. And actually, for me, playing in a team is more than just your skills. It's about what you bring to that environment. It's almost like your hidden stuff. It's the stuff that nobody else sees. They can see your stats, but they don't know what you do in that environment to make it a buoyant environment. And I think at that level, or any level really, these sort of players are worth the weight in gold, because they're greater than just what the skills are. And that's kind of what we had. And we had it at Warwickshire. That England team definitely had it. And it's a shame that England team didn't really get a chance to evolve beyond the next series. We went to the Caribbean after that and we lost 4-1. We could quite easily have won the series 4-1. And then we'd have gone to the next series against South Africa in the UK with the same team. As it was, it all got disbanded and they went a different way. And that's a disappointment, because I know that team would have been successful if they had been given a bit more sort of continuity with the selection.
So I mean, that the England career was pretty short-lived, Dougie. Obviously, great. You got to play for England, and you did some phenomenal things on the pitch. I'm sure you would have wanted to go on and play, but listen, these things happen. You then probably, do you miss out on a 99 World Cup with Scotland because of that?
Yeah, so after I played for England, I had to wait for 4 years to re-qualify for Scotland. So in '99, I was a reserve for England. 99 World Cup. I was a bit disappointed that I got left out of that squad, but I understand that's professional sport. And then playing for Scotland wasn't an option because I had to wait for 4 years, and I just got my head down, got into county cricket, and started to just do as well as I could for Warwickshire. If England came and I got selected, then great, but I didn't. So actually, I had to wait the 4 years, and then coming back into the Scotland fold, it wasn't. I remember I was actually being down in, where was it? It was Campbelltown or something like that, at a friend's wedding, and Jim Love knew that I was at the wedding. He had been in touch and he wanted to meet with me because my 4 year period was just about up, and there was cricket coming up, and he wanted to sort of sound me out as to whether where I was at with regards to playing for Scotland. And so I met with Jim, and I've got to say that Jim was a great man. I think he was probably one of the people that definitely started the journey that Scotland are on at the moment. He had that foresight, along with many others, but I think as a coach, you need to have that foresight and look beyond your own tenure to think, well, actually, I'm going to put stuff in place that will outlast me, but I know that somebody else will really benefit from it. And I think, you know, Jim deserves a lot of credit for what he did by really sort of embracing that type of longevity and that sort of longer process, and looking at people that maybe otherwise wouldn't be selected, sort of coming back into environments, etc. So I met with Jim, and then, you know, I'd served my 4 years, and then I started to play for Scotland again. It's interesting now, it's now only 2 years. So if I'd played, you know, now I'd have to wait 2 years, but it was 4 then.
I mean, it's interesting because there's two big players in particular with Scottish cricket that I've now had on the podcast, and one is obviously Gavin Hamilton, one's yourself. Gavin Hamilton could have got selected for England for that 99 World Cup. He was close. We might have lost out in having Gav, and unfortunately we lost out in being able to select yourself because of the, you know, selection criteria and the amount of years you had to serve. So it would have been nice to have both of you in that World Cup side. But look, these things happen. Thankfully, we had you back right in amongst it again for the 2005 ICC Trophy out in Ireland. Great tournament for Scotland. You personally, you took 11 wickets in the tournament, and you scored a pivotal 59 in the final to beat Ireland. Tell me about your experience of being away with that squad, and, you know, your memories of that.
Okay, so I came from Warwickshire that time, and it was quite a big thing to do, to leave the summer playing domestic cricket in England with your county to go. I was you know, I was still playing good cricket and, you know, integral part of the Warwickshire side, and it was probably quite a big thing because it didn't really happen before. You leave to go and play for an associate nation in a World Cup qualifier, but I did, and it was like, and I went and joined them. And I remember I flew over in the morning, so really, because we'd finished a game the day before, and I could only get flights out. We were playing in Belfast, and I got there, I think I got there in the morning, and we were playing against Canada. And so Scotland had played a couple of games before that. And so I'm coming in as a bit of I knew all the players, but I was still coming.
You're big time, Dougie, man. You're one of the big boys.
Mate, no.
Coming over from
the thing is, you come into an environment, you're still an outsider, because then it doesn't matter how big you are, you still got to fit into that environment, understand how that environment works, you know how the whole thing fits together. And that's, for me, that is what being a team is about, understanding where you fit. It doesn't matter how good a player you are, what you've done before. You need to find what you do in that environment, and understand, you know, are there things that people are not so good at that you might be able to do, and vice versa, and just work out how the whole sort of thing works. For me, that's really important. So you still come in as a bit of a nervy outsider, because they've played a couple of games, you know, they're sort of entrenched in the tournament, they've had preparation before it, and you just come in and you get selected straight away, and somebody gets left out because you're playing. So there's that whole dynamic so you better think, well, I better do well here, because I'm letting the person who's not been picked, I'm letting him down. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on that people don't even think about. So I came into that environment, but looking back at that, it was one of the best periods. That was a really, really, really good Scotland team. Really good Scotland team. Right. And you could go through 1 to 15, and you could have picked anybody in any role, and they would have done really, really well. One of my club teammates would have been in that side. Greg Williams. Greg would have been out there. Greg was there, he was there. I think Greg might have been the one that got left out for me to play the game. That's what I was thinking. Greg, the poor guy, would have, because he was a big, you know, all-rounder, and probably you coming in meant he had to take the bench. Great player in his own right. Craig Wright, you know, Ryan Watson was in his full prime at that point. And Gav, there was Blaney. Fraggle, you know, Fraser Watts, Colin Smith. Like, you can go through 1 to 15. I think a young Kyle Coetzer might have been on that trip as well. Yeah, you go through that whole team. There was not a weak link in that team. They're amazing, really good side. And actually, all the way through that tournament, we just got better and better and better. You know, Mola was coach, which is great. You know, Andy to be one through my Warwickshire days. You know, to be there at the end, to be singing Flower of Scotland in the dressing room after beating Ireland was one of the things I'll never forget, because it was unbelievable. It really was phenomenal. And it was like a passion and something that I hadn't experienced, that sort of level of, I'd experienced winning and being happy and jubilant and stuff like that. I'd never really experienced that, that level of passion, because Scottish people are quite passionate people, particularly when it comes to Scotland, and that was just phenomenal. I was absolutely blown away by what we did, but I was more blown away by how we played a cricket. It was brilliant. Just when we got into a bit of strife, somebody would pull it out of the bag and somebody would put in a spell, whether it was with bat and ball or in the field or whatever. And it was just really good. It was just awesome to be part of. And then, playing in the final as well. I know we won the game relatively comfortably in the end, but it was really close,
I mean, just to name a few, you're coming up against some proper players in the opposition as well. I mean, the opposition were Ed Joyce would have been playing, a young Owen Morgan coming in. I think Paul Hoffman bowled a great spell of bowling in that game. It was a proper box office final there between two teams that were probably potentially both tipped to could potentially win the tournament, and to do it on Irish soil must have been great feeling. Like you're saying, awesome. The changing room was buzzing.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, we obviously knew that going into that final, we both qualified for the World Cup, but it wasn't about that. It was about winning the tournament. And I think we from the moment that the team left Scotland to go there, it was about that. It was about winning the tournament. And actually, that was what it had to be. It was, you come up against Ireland, probably the two strongest teams in the tournament at the time. To get to a final and you're on their home soil and there's a big partisan crowd at Clontarf, it was an amazing day again, weather-wise. So it was a massive crowd, and to go out there and for the game to be in the balance for as long as it was, them chasing a massive total, Ed Joyce going really strong, and to get out on top was just amazing. Qualifying for a World Cup is right up there with anybody, and getting the opportunity to qualify for a World Cup for players who don't always get that chance, it is amazing. To play in a World Cup is fantastic, but actually the qualification for it in many ways actually is bigger than the tournament itself, because you know what you've got to lose. Like if you get yourself across the line, it's unreal. You're going to World Cup. If you just stumble, then it's like what could have been, and you miss it, and all that sort of stuff that comes with it. I
mean, I had the same experience, Dougie, in under-19s playing against Ireland. Whoever wins, winner takes all, goes to New Zealand for the under-19 World Cup, and we got over the line that time. And wow, I know for you did it in the national team, but doing it in the 19s, it's everything to you, absolutely everything. Scottish and Irish players. So it's awesome that you got to be part of that. Unfortunately, though, I had John Mooney on a bit earlier in one of the seasons, and he said it was a bit unfortunate for you boys because you then went on to the 2007 World Cup and got South Africa, Australia in the group, and they got slightly, you wouldn't say easier than the group we had. They played Pakistan, Zimbabwe. There's a big difference between the teams that we came up against. But yeah, talk to me about the 2007 World Cup.
Yeah, it was a great experience. I think so. I'd coached Namibia in 2003, and then went back in 2007 as a player. I think I'm the only person.
That's so weird.
Yeah, I know. But it was just an amazing experience. Pretty much with the same bunch of players that had got us to that point. There was a couple of younger players that had come into that environment, etc. But in essence, it was the same squad of players. You've got all to do. You're playing against Scotland and you're playing against Australia and South Africa, who are probably the two strongest teams in the competition at the time. They've got pace, they've got hostility. We're up against Australia, and there's guys bowling like 159 k's an hour.
Yeah, Tate. They had boy Tate at that point. It was just
and Colin Smith. I'm at the non-strike. Colin Smith's running at him, hitting him over his head. I'm like, what are you doing?
That was a great. Yeah, no, he played it. He found a way to just. I mean, Floppy's got a weird technique. He knows what he's doing with it. I think he kind of he was moving inside it a little bit that time. He played him really smart.
He did. He played it really well. But what he forgot is that the guys at the other end had to face him as well, and he's just hit him over his head for 4. So he's not going to like. Oh, I'll tell you what. it wasn't you that did it. I'm going to just ease up on you. I'll wait for him. It's like, it was rapid.
Yeah.
But it was a phenomenal experience. The biggest regret I've got was it's not losing to Australia and to South Africa. It's the fact that when we played against the Netherlands, and which in effect was our group stage final, we ended up batting on a wicket that was tacky and went sideways, and it ended up being a really one-sided event, and it wasn't. That's not how the tournament should have been. You know, I actually think we won the toss as well and batted first on that wicket, but it made it like really unbalanced, and it was a bit unfair on us what we had achieved to actually come away from that tournament having played some pretty good cricket in the build-up to it and during the tournament, and actually to come away getting shot out for 130 or whatever it was, and for them to win by 7 wickets was a bit unfair, because we were better than that, and there was never that much of a divide. It would have been great to have won a game in a World Cup, and because I think that would have probably give everybody a lot of momentum coming back to the UK and then accelerating again from that point.
No, it was. I have to say, watching from the outside, had high hopes when we went out there. Good core of players that went out there. Just, you know, you can't really complain when you come up against 2 best teams in the world. But yeah, the Dutch game was, and yeah, strange the toss. I remember that. We should have had a trundle that day. The next World Cup, T20 World Cup, was where I came and joined you in the changing room, Dougie. My first experience of kind of meeting you in person. I got picked in a 15-man squad to go out to South Africa for the T20 World Cup, and it was. I remember it well coming into the kind of changing room. First, we'd arrived there. We were training at Centurion or something like that. We'd gone for a training session, and you know, I think I'm one of them. I'm not shy. I like to get around the guys that I know are big playing. I knew of you playing your county cricket for many years, and I kind of came up and probably nattered your brain a wee bit early doors. Do you remember that?
I do. You didn't shut up. It was like, who's this guy? Like, no, not at all. I do remember, actually. I do. Again, it was another great experience. Anytime you get a chance to play in a World Cup, it's. I mean, what were your recollections of that? It must be right up there with one of the best things you've done.
Like to arrive there and be, you know, I looked up to a lot of the players in that team. I watched Gavin Hamilton at the 1998 World Cup as a little kid, you know, make 70 odd against Pakistan at Chesley Street, and I was just like in awe of him. So to be on tour with him now, going to a World Cup, you know, Blaney, yourself, Watson, Wright, all these guys that, you know, I'd kind of aspired to get into that mix. Amazing feeling. We played a couple of warm-up games. I still have a little bit of a sour grape over it, because we were told in the warm-up games that whoever performed well, it didn't matter who you were going to play the game. And I had a good performance against Zimbabwe in one of the warm-up games. Unfortunately, it didn't get me picked for the Pakistan game. I tell this story all the time, Dougie, so you're going to have to hear it as well. But no, just to be there and be part of all of that, and be, you know, Pakistan and India in our group for a young boy coming from an Asian background, you know, just a special feeling.
Yeah.
But I mean, from your point of view, I think you played against Pakistan, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and then India, obviously, we tossed up, and it came down to 5-over game, and we won the toss with bowling in really juicy conditions. You probably remember. But the game, then it rained again, and the game was off. But I think Pakistan, I was really kind of gutted after the Pakistan game, because
we could have won that.
Yeah, we could have won that. Yeah, and I didn't bowl very well, if I'm honest, and that was disappointing. But we could have won that. We could have won that. You know, I think we didn't play it very smart as a team. I didn't play very smart individually, which is disappointing, because you're an experienced player. But that's the game. You know, you sometimes you just got to live and die by the decisions you make. And I made sort of some bad ones with a ball, and that's what happens. But you know, again, that was a good team that went away, and I actually thought that we could have done pretty well in that tournament. I'd love to play against India in a 5-over game, because, you know, to be fair, it doesn't matter. Anything can happen.
Like you're in India. When we're at Kingswood, it's like you're in India. I mean, the whole place there's such an Indian community there. There was a full house. It was ready to go off, but the rain it was that horrible Durban drizzle.
I know. Well, it's like what you see in Glasgow every third day, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's all right for you to say sitting over there in Dubai. Probably had a lovely air-conditioned house there, boiling outside.
Yeah.
But it was a frustrating night. It was a frustrating night. Actually, I've recorded and it's been out already with Siri Sant. And he was gutted. He wanted to play against Scotland that night. He said it was a shame for you guys. He said because you were still in the mix potentially. Yeah. You could have caused a little. I mean, it wasn't going to take much to maybe get us through.
No, not at all. I mean, India had an amazing team as well. They're full of all the world's best players. Dhoni, Harbhajan, you name it. They were all playing. But I actually think we could have turned them over because in a 5-over game, it doesn't really take much. One person can have one good over, and that changes the whole tempo of the game. And we could have done it, having won the toss and bowled first.
The conditions certainly suited us better than it suited them. We're more used to playing in the wet conditions.
Definitely, no, for sure. But again, we can talk about what might have been. We didn't get the chance to run through and play the game. But again, that's another phenomenal experience for me. And somebody has played quite a lot of cricket. I still like look back to these occasions, like the World Cup, the whole experience of the World Cup, the whole experience of the 2007 50-over World Cup, and I go back and I think actually that is just amazing. They're amazing experiences that I was so lucky to be part of. I know you experienced it. It's amazing when you're part in it and train it. You don't actually quite appreciate what you're part of. It's only after the event then you understand just the magnitude of what you're doing.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one I'll be hopefully getting to tell the grandkids one day that once upon a time I went to T20 World Cup. The two teams, funny that we just on that, we'll close the subject on that one. They went on to contest the final, a very close final that Pakistan just kind of bottled just at the very end. So it just shows you. I mean, we were in a proper group there, but really genuinely, we could have come out of that group if some things had went our way. You spoke very honestly about things, and maybe it just didn't come out as well as you would have wanted it to that day. But no, we had a good unit out there. You come back from there, Dougie, and soon after that, unfortunately, probably a sad night or evening. You tore your Achilles tendon playing for Warwickshire, and that was pretty much the playing days. No more was going to be the case that you were going to go into a coaching role and then a playing role. That pretty much decided that the playing days were coming to an end. How was that for you?
It was kind of frustrating. Obviously, you played a lot of cricket for Warwickshire and that sort of stuff, and all the games that you have played. I remember we were playing against Northants in a televised game. I think it was a T20 game, and I hadn't bowled, but I'd run around everywhere, and then I batted as well. I batted. I scored. I remember I scored 19 not out of 10 balls without hitting a boundary. So we'd scampered, at the back end of the game, and my Achilles was feeling a bit stiff, and I was like, that's fine. And I was mic'd up as well because you're on Sky and that sort of stuff. And I just set off the field one. I was fielding at square leg, and I went off to get one because there was a run out chance, and I just felt like somebody had hit me with a stick. I was like, oh. And you automatically look around to think, what was that? And then you realise you can't actually move your leg. And the frustrating thing is that all the games you've played, I don't know how many games I've played for Warwickshire, but it's running into hundreds. The way that it finishes, the last game that you play is a game that you end up getting stretchers off. And it's like, there are many ways that you'd like to finish your career, but that's not the way you want to finish it.
And you say, thank you. But, you might have to play a few more games as well. You would obviously still do a job for the team, but unfortunately, it was a painful walk off, carry off.
It was. I had a chance after that. I definitely there was an opportunity for me to play elsewhere, and it just wasn't right for me and the family and all that sort of stuff at that stage. And it's like, well, no, I'm actually going to get into coaching, because I realized that if I got into coaching, then it probably, I could have gone and played somewhere else for a couple of years and then missed out on the opportunity to develop myself as a coach and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was, I got a chance to coach at Warwickshire thereafter, and I'm glad. It's like retiring is something. It's quite hard because
Yeah,
you know that once you finish, you're not coming back again.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy decision to make. But for me, this was actually quite easy. It was like, okay, I've played quite a lot of cricket. You know, I want to sort of challenge myself in a different way, and I know that the way to challenge it is by coaching. I was just kind of a little bit gutted that my career ended in a way that I didn't get a chance to kind of walk off and say thanks to everybody for supporting me throughout my career. You end up being stretchered off, and it's like you're straight to the hospital for an operation on your Achilles, you know. But that's you know,
that's part of your story, Dougie. That's part of your story. That's just the way. That's the way it's going to be. That's the way it's written. Thankfully, you got to. You know, you're blessed. You know, compared to a lot of people, then pretty much that's the end of it for them. There might not be a transition into coaching. You had a great, you know, already you had something in your CV as well. You'd coached an international team going to a World Cup, and you took a nice transition into taking the Warwickshire coaching at Warwickshire. I remember coming down actually to play an A-team game against you. But I can't remember what the place was called. It was a lovely kind of.
It was rugby school.
That's right. And it really annoyed me actually because I went into your changing room afterwards, and there was a little note on the wall. And you had my name, and you went, he's a bit soft, get stuck into him. And I was like, what? Dougie said, I'm soft? That's not like, I was affronted by that. You could have said, he doesn't move his feet early on. He maybe gets that. But when you call you call a boy from Glasgow soft, I was like, oh, where's Dougie Brown? I want to.
The thing is, the majority of things that you write up there, it's actually more to just to give your team a little bit of a focus. Yeah. So it's not even about whether you are or you're not. Yeah. The technical stuff, the psychological, mental stuff, it's not actually, it's not.
Doesn't mean that.
It doesn't mean anything. All it does mean is it actually gives your team a bit of a focus. And actually, sometimes you would do that with players you know are completely not that way. Yeah. Just to make sure that there is a battle on and that people don't lose their focus when they're up against somebody who might be quite strong mentally. So it's like, please don't take it personally.
Tell me, Dougie, you were letting them know that they're in for a dogfight when they come right. Okay, that's all right. I was all
exactly.
I've always needed to talk to you about this. We've done it on camera, but we're all good. We're all good.
I've clawed my way back there. Are you my friend still?
I'm still your friend, Dougie. I'm still your friend. You had a great, you know, you went on to do amazing things with Warwickshire as a coach, and particularly, you won 2 trophies as a coach there. One of them came in 2014 on the T20 Blast. What an achievement!
Yeah, I'm really proud of that because that is something that we had never done. I played in the first T20 final in 2003 against Surrey, and Warwickshire had never been to finals day since 2003. So 2014 was our first finals day. So it's actually 12 seasons, and to get there and to do it at Edgbaston was a remarkable achievement. We had struggled through the group stages, and it's always the way. 2020. It's never the team that bombs the first group stages and wins every game and goes into quarterfinals. It's never that team that wins a tournament. It's always a team that kind of struggles a little bit, but comes into a style of play. And because you start the tournament thinking that we're going to play this way, this is a strategy, blah, blah, blah. But your strategy develops because you learn from games that you didn't win. And it develops over time. And then all of a sudden, I've got nothing to lose. So we were at a stage whereby we had to win the last 3 games, and games had to go for us elsewhere. And it did. And we only qualified because I can't even remember who it was, but one team beat another team that was not expected, and we qualified in through the back door. So we actually realized we had nothing to lose. And that actually makes you a really sort of challenging foe because you know you've got nothing to lose. So it doesn't matter what stage the game's at, you're just going to give it a proper crack. And that's what we did. And we came into a really good game, and we played a brilliant finals day. We won the first game. We won and beat Lancashire in the final, which was phenomenal doing it in front of if there is a home crowd. To do it on your home ground certainly was something very, very special. But the biggest thing for me that year was the fact that, and probably a lot of people forget this, that we won that. We were runners-up to Durham in the 50 over competition at Lords. We lost really narrowly. Ben Stokes had a decent day, and we lost by 3 wickets. And we were runners-up in the championship that year as well. So of the 3 tournaments, we're winners, runners-up, runners-up. And that was actually something I was really proud of because, most teams will talk at the start of the year about identifying one of the tournaments and actually going for that tournament. Warwickshire, in my time and before that, always said, we look to try and win everything. And actually, it doesn't normally pan out that way, but I've been pretty lucky to be part of teams that have pretty much won everything twice. And then 2014 as a coach, we were winners, runners up. And that's as close as you'll really get to, to
doing what you done back in '94 as a player.
Yeah, and then '95 as well. We won 2 trophies and we runners up in the third one of the 4. So it's great to be part of that. And when you're competing across all 3 fronts, it is just incredible as a club, and it's an incredible feeling that to try and put it into words actually underplays everything, because you can't put it into words, because it would take a million words to actually, and even then you probably wouldn't quite get it. It's a feel. You just know what it feels like to be competing across all fronts, and you just know what people do. You can second guess what people are going to do before they actually do it. And that's, for me, that is what playing sport is about. It's about just knowing, just knowing your team and knowing what might happen. And it's very special, very, very special.
No, quality. 2000, you go on again, you win another trophy, 2016, the Royal London Cup, which is more of a one-day match, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, again, beating Surrey in the final. Surrey had all the superstars out, and we went in there probably not as a favourites. Although, don't get me wrong, we had some pretty good players in that team. Bell, Trott, Wokes, there's 3. Jeetan Patel, 4, and some other really, really good players. But we still went in there as the underdogs, and we went there and we just played a great game. Trotty batted brilliantly. We bowled incredibly well, and I think that was a really, really good team performance. Really, really proud of both these wins. I think it's easy to look back and say, well, anything you win, I'm really proud of. But I was really proud of how we won the 2014 T20 Blast, because we came from behind the pack. And I think the Royal London 2016, we did exactly the same thing again. Kind of stumbled through the group stages, came onto a game, and then by the time we got to the final, we actually knew that we would have to play really badly if we weren't going to get across the line, even if someone like Jason Roy had his day, because we just knew that we were playing really good cricket and we trusted what we were about.
Brilliant. Do you think Warwickshire just had enough of you at that point, Dougie? Because surprisingly, I mean, 10-year career.
It seemed that way.
A good lengthy coaching career. I mean, you seemed to be going from strength to strength, and then it was obviously you were let go. Was a bit of a surprise looking in from the outside?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously at the time you're kind of disappointed, you're gutted. It's like you're a bit angry and all that sort of stuff. But that's the game, It's like, it doesn't matter what you think. When somebody makes a decision as to what direction the team or the club are going, then you just have to abide by that decision and accept it. And there's 2 ways you go from there. You either fight it and are bitter and twisted about it, or you accept it and you move on to the next challenge. And that's kind of what I did. It takes a couple of weeks before you can get your head around the fact that, your ego's been dented maybe a little bit. You've been, especially having won a trophy and having done pretty well over the last sort of 2 or 3 years. That's disappointing. But then, you clear the slate and you think, okay, fine, there are worse things in the world, and you go on to the next thing. And that's kind of what professional sport's about. You know that if you are head coach of somewhere, you know that you're the first person that's going to be on the chopping block if it doesn't go brilliantly well. And nowadays, it needs to go really, really well for you to keep your job, because people just think it's turning a little bit more into football type merry-go-round. You don't win a trophy, you go. Somebody else comes in, and that's kind of that's kind of the mentality I think that cricket's got itself into. Don't get me wrong, the guy that replaced me was a top bloke. He was my best man. I was his best man.
Yeah.
So Ashley Giles came back, and I don't have any problems with that at all. And Warwickshire were probably right to go for somebody that actually he only left because he went to England. So when I got the job in the first place, it was quite an unusual circumstance. Usually it's because somebody's not doing so well. Mine it was a really buoyant environment, but the coach was going to an England environment. So I'm really thankful looking back that I got the opportunity to look further afield, and actually getting the opportunity to spread my wings as a coach and coach in a very different way in a completely different environment. And although I've sort of been involved in a very sort of diverse environment at Warwickshire, been in the Midlands, multicultural, coming to the UAE was absolutely astounding, really, where you're coming into, a completely Asian environment where you had to find a different way to coach, and coming from that sort of background, that it's a different style of coaching. The coach is revered. The coach is like the dad. It's like the grandfather, and you're put on such a pedestal, and it's like, tell me. I'm like, guys, you need to learn. I want you to be an independent thinker. I want you to make your own decisions when you're out in the middle. I can't make your decisions. I can't tell you what shot to play or what, but that's kind of how the mentality was, and it took a long time to break the back of it. And it's a very different way of coaching. But actually, I think it's enhanced my coaching no end, because you get an awesome experience to understand a different culture, to understand a different way of coaching, and actually to broaden your own horizons.
No, it's quality. I mean, you touched on earlier on, the way your family's settled there, and the fact that your kids are getting a really kind of diverse upbringing, or you're saying one of your little ones learning about Arabic and stuff like that. I mean, that's really impressive. And you see yourself, you don't, who knows? I know there's something. The UAE job, and the World Cup as well. You've now coached at 2 World Cup, Dougie. Namibia first, and then more recent times UAE. Didn't go so well, but it had a bit to do with the fact that there was some selection issues and stuff that went on with the team.
It wasn't so much selection. It was the fact that we go into the World Cup qualifiers as the highest ranked team, and you're talking about T20 World Cup.
Yes.
We go in there as the highest ranked team in the tournament, and we've developed everything from, we know exactly roles, specificity. Everybody knows a role. The style of play, strategy, etc., etc. We knew how we were going to play against this team, that team, Scotland, Netherlands, whatever, as and when we came up against them. We're in our own backyard, and the day before the tournament started, we ended up losing 3 players on corruption charges.
Yep.
Now, these 3 players, one's your captain, one's your opening batsman, and the other one is one of your opening bowlers. So it's like, okay. And then as the tournament progressed, we realized that we lost 3 more players. So you're losing 6 players of your starting 11, which, it's, I know that the investigation is still ongoing. I'm not going to comment on whether they're right or wrong or indifferent, but as a coach, it was a hell of a challenge, because you built your strategy, you built your team, you built everything, your style of play on your personnel. And when you lose more than half of them that are going to start in pretty much every game, then that poses a massive problem for you.
Yeah.
Despite that, we still actually gave ourselves a really good chance. And, to the outside world, you probably wouldn't have seen or understood what we were actually going through every day.
Yeah.
But by the time we came to the last 2 games, knowing that we had to win one of them against firstly Netherlands, secondly Scotland, we had taken so many punches. We had nothing left to give. So what you saw was not what was actually going on. It's a bit like a swan on top of the water, but underneath, there was paddling going on like you wouldn't believe. And we did really well to disguise it and hide it from everybody, but there's only so long you can do that for until you end up running out of steam. And that's exactly what we did. And I suppose ultimately that's it cost me my job at the UAE. That said, as disappointing as it is not to qualify for a World Cup, I'm incredibly proud when I look back over my 3.5 years that I was head coach of the UAE. I'm incredibly proud of what we achieved on a number of different fronts. Taking the team to places, not physical places, but to places in the game that they never thought was possible. challenging themselves to do things that they never thought was possible themselves, getting to our highest ever world ranking in both formats, 50 over and T20. You know, to get to number 13 in the world is an incredible feat. From when I took over, we were like languishing sort of number 20, 21. And actually to get to that point, to beat a full member, you know, Zimbabwe in the final game that stopped him qualifying for the World Cup. So many proud achievements. I honestly, incredibly proud of what we've achieved. Obviously, disappointing not to finish. A bit like my Warwickshire career as a player. Disappointing not to finish the way we wanted it to finish. But, you know, again, that's the game. And you've just got to accept what happens, rightly or wrongly.
Is there anything on the horizon, coaching-wise? Are we going to see Dougie Brown coaching any of the other? I mean, you're still a young man in the coaching world. Is there anything maybe on the horizon?
I was thinking about playing again. What do you reckon?
Why not? I'm still looking. I mean, like I said at the start, every time I talk, you're always running a fat.
I mean, I think there's plenty on the go at the moment. You know, I would never rule anything out, but you know, there's some exciting things on the horizon, and you know, on the next sort of 2 or 3 weeks, I'll be able to share these things with everybody. At the minute, we're just kind of busy behind the scenes, making sure that they're all the way they need to be, and looking forward to the next chapter.
Well, look forward to hearing what's coming next for you, Dougie. Look, just a couple of quick fire questions before we finish up. I think I probably know the answer to the first question, but I'll ask it anyway. Who's the best player you've ever played with?
Do you know what? I'm not going to say Brian Lara. So the best overseas player I've played with is, without a shadow of a doubt, Alan Donald. Like, amazing. The best player, and it depends what you want to call it. Is it your best performer? Is it somebody who gives to your team, or is it somebody who performs better than what the skill set probably? Because it's a really difficult question to answer. What I will say is, Ashley Giles was a pretty limited cricketer, but an amazing player. And if the team were ever, and I'm talking about Warwickshire or England, if they were ever in a challenging position, he always found a way to get the team or himself out of that position. Like, unbelievably good player. Nick Knight was another one, very limited player, but as a one-day player, particularly,
it's a bit like Bevan. Nick Knight, he always used to remind me a bit of Bevan. He just found a way to score runs.
But I'm gonna put myself out there, and it's the best player I've ever played with is Jonathan Trott. Not because of any reason other than, irrespective of any situation, he will always take the game by the scruff of the neck, and he'll always churn him out. Ian Bell, very close, very sort of different kind of a player. Very close decision, but I would say Trotty is somebody that just found a way. Outstanding player. Again, a bit like Alan Donald. You wouldn't know whether Trotty was playing a test match or playing for Warwickshire, one-day game, test match, didn't matter. He just wanted to win the game. And so for that reason, I'd say probably Trotty's probably up there with one of the best players I've played with.
Yeah, fantastic player. Okay, who's the best Scotland player you've seen?
There's a lot. I mean, you look at that I've played with, I'll say that I've played with. I think, obviously, latterly, someone like Callum has done brilliantly well. Kyle done incredibly well. Most of the guys that are playing currently in the Scotland team, I will have certainly played against in some way, shape or form. Phenomenal players, but guys that I actually played with, Gav obviously is a really, really good player. Blaney was excellent. But I'm gonna say that the best player that I played was Craig Wright, because Wrighty, again, another one, again, quite a limited player. But Wrighty, look at Wrighty's record. You know, forget with a bat, think about with a ball. If you watched him bowl, and you know, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, like, It wasn't the most
His legs would be going everywhere.
pretty of actions, you know.
Yeah.
But actually, he was unbelievable and a massive competitor. Just found a way. He did really well against everybody. So I'm going to say that Wrighty probably, and actually, I don't know where everybody else's stats are against his, but he must compare really favourably against most people ever to pull on a Scotland jersey.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Wrighty, especially when Scotland made the transition into county cricket, Wrighty's spells were just phenomenal. He had no right ball and those type of spells. No. It was funny, actually, the T20 World Cup, Wrighty was not selected to play against Pakistan, and Ross Lyons was due to play. Yeah. I felt sorry for Ross on the morning of the game. He was told on the bus that he was coming out because we'd had a watch and the pitch seemed to be doing it. But Wrighty's spell against Pakistan was class.
Amazing. Yeah, unbelievable.
So, I think it's a good shout by you. Wayne, just the last question. What would you say is the best moment you've ever experienced on a cricket field?
You know what? I reckon it's that last ball that you bowl at the end of the season. Genuinely, when you've had you've been involved in the majority of games, and you're running on absolute empty, and you know that you don't have to bowl another ball because you're not coming into space.
Your toes are about to fall off the front foot.
Mate.
That's a good answer.
Away from that, from a sort of success point of view, the best feeling I ever had was running into bowl the first ball of the match in my first Lord's final against Northants. So I ran in bowling to Alan Fordham, and I remember there was 28,000 people at Lord's. It was a delayed start, 1995, and I cannot remember. I can remember, but I could not feel the ball in my hand. For me, that was a phenomenal experience because it was like, I'm absolutely petrified here, and I just hope it gets somewhere. Forget close to the stumps. I just hope it gets somewhere close to the pitch. And your eyes of the world watching you and running into ball, knowing you're absolutely terrified. For me, that is what playing sport's all about. It's about overcoming fears. It's about knowing that you're vulnerable and actually still finding a way to overcome your vulnerability. Again, that was probably something that I managed to deal with pretty well. But it's terrifying at the time. Coming through that, so walking back, second ball, having bowled the first ball, probably was that best feeling ever, knowing that I've just bowled that ball and I've now played in a Lord's final. And that, for me, was everything that I wanted to try and achieve out of playing cricket. And I actually, after that first ball, I'd achieved it.
Listen, Dougie Brown, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. When I sat down to prepare for this podcast, I was just amazed when you actually look at it of everything you've done in the game. The fact that you once coached at a World Cup and then played in a World Cup after it, I just find that if they look into that and do the research, it can't happen very often in cricket. Lengthy career as a county cricketer. You played for England, ODIs, you played for Scotland. You've done it all. I wish you nothing but the very best in the next chapter. All the best to you and your family out in Dubai. And look, this will. I think the general public will enjoy this one. But thanks again for coming on, and please keep tuning into my show, Dougie.
Will do. Cheers, Shaky, as well. I really appreciate your time, and thanks to everybody for supporting me all the way through my career. If indeed you did. If you didn't, well, I'm sorry, but for the majority, thank you very much for shouting out for me.
No, listen, Dougie, I'm sure many supported you. You're a good man. You take care of yourself.